Please. I would.
So it's straight now.
Yeah, no.
That's why I came up to tell you about it.
Oh, I missed it. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay, I'm just reminding you.
Sometimes I look.
Oh, well, it's easy to want to overlook that.
Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, we will get the meeting
Yeah, I
called to
know, that's how
order
I feel about it.
Tuesday, October 22nd at 6:06 p.m. Roll call directors, please.
Barnes?
Here.
Bauman? Here. Lewis?
Here.
Gorman?
Here.
Hanson?
Here.
Hermany?
Here.
Kaiser?
Here.
Maisel?
Yes, ma'am.
Zebro?
Yes.
And student rep Macy Priest.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, approval of the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Jess and a second by Mike. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion will carry. Item 5, approval of the minutes. We have 5A and B for the regular Board of Education meeting September 17th and special Board of Education meeting October 7th.
I'll make the motion to approve both of them.
Okay, we have a motion by Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second them.
And a second by Kelly. Further discussion?
I'll be abstaining.
We may need to break them out separately just because of the absences are different with the two.
Well, if we do you just want to abstain from the ones that people weren't here for?
But I don't think Mark was at the second one.
Oh.
Okay, so we have to do them separate.
Right. So 5A, Mark, I just wanted to revise it.
Make a motion to approve,
5A, okay, and Kelly?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the regular Board of Education meeting from September 17th. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will carry. Then I now need a 1 for 5B for the special meeting.
I'll make that. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Peter and a second by Mike. Further discussion?
I was absent, so I'll abstain.
And I think Nancy? Okay. Any others? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then you have the 3, correct? Item 6, public forum. The public forum provides the public with the opportunity to ask questions about or address issues included on the school board meeting agenda. General operating rules of the public forum will be determined by the board president once the number of people wishing to speak is identified on the night of the meeting. Prior to addressing the board, please clearly state your name and address and share with the board what agenda item you're speaking to the board on. At this time, is there anybody that would like to talk to the board? Bernie.
Good evening. My name is Bernie Kramer, 2150 East State Highway 153. Now, these are just some concerns. I'm no expert. I don't have any solutions to any of this here. But you're working on a strategic plan, and these are all social issues here, like student transportation service. I mean, they're the bus route where we are out there, as you know. When our kids went to school, the whole works a mile down. When they got off at Wanzas, they walked a mile to save time and whatever, And I think since you're going to have a strategic plan, I got another item here. But I mean, the busing situation, at least let people know that you're really interested in doing the best possible job. I think there are some people think that the job could be done better. I'm probably one of them. And I'm not going to judge anybody, but there should be more transparency, maybe a little dialogue, with some people so that they really understand. Even in the paper, I know it's not academic, but I know there's over 1,000 students probably in the bus. I don't know how many there are, but I'm guessing. But that's a lot, and a lot of money is spent, and taxpayers are being served. You know, if these students were older, they want, you know, you'd have to improve certain things, but, and I look at these little Johnny and Susie, they're 5, 6, 7 years old, and we handle them like Lego blocks. Okay, I'll leave that. Now I want to go to the school-based food pantry thing. This is good. It's been in the district already for quite a few years. We participated in it there 6, 7 years ago at the Ella. But that being said, I think that's something that's worthwhile being discussed at the when you have your strategic plan. You know, you're looking for donations, and that wears pretty thin after a while. And then the thing is, that's okay to do that. But then you have the student-run organizations. My thought with the student-run is that I expect these kids to go to school and concentrate on academics, their extracurricular activities, and everything else. Now, it's okay to participate in it, but student-run, I kind of pull back. And then you got the staff. You know, I still think back 50 years ago, you know, the teachers had to have pencils and paper, and they were handing stuff out to students. They forget, or they couldn't afford it. And now here we got them in the food business. I mean, you know, how much further are we going? And then, with that being said, is none of these programs are going to be less. They keep getting more. The graph keeps going negative, and all these social, these social issues that we have. Then we have this foster care. You know, I know this isn't, you know, something that we have, but we do connect with it. People have to be hauled off to foster care and hauled back in. But I think there should be a more of a connection with the school board, knowing what's really going on, and maybe have some input and provide some better understanding for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything? Okay. Yeah. Is there anybody else? Okay, we're moving on. Item 7, student board report.
Hi, my name is Macy Priest. I'm a junior, and I'm the new school board rep. Nothing really has changed from the school board report that was handed out. But we did have our blood drive yesterday, and it was kind of cool because we had over 50 students participate in it, which our goal was 28, and that's way more than we could have ever thought.
So a big thank you from myself, and I know Mr. Lehman, and also the school board for you stepping up and into the role. So thank you very much. It's brave, and you did a great job.
Welcome.
Are you on student council?
Yes.
In what role?
Oh, school board.
No, I meant.
Oh, like our class?
Yes,
Oh, yeah, I'm a treasurer.
treasurer. Thank you, that's what I was thinking.
Thank you. Item 8, consent agenda, building committee consent.
Okay, we met tonight, and in your package you have what we went over. And I don't know if anybody has any questions or want to hear a little report from Steve. It's totally up to you.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Buildings are coming down. Steve's doing a great job with that. They're down and should be filled in within a couple weeks.
Weather permitting, yeah.
He's got a couple other things going.
Yep.
Maybe touch base with us on the,
Drainage issue?
yeah.
Yeah, so on number 8 in the back of the proposal that you folks have in front of you, we are working with the city of Mosinee to help with our drainage issue that's along Range Line Road. So currently last month the city, Kevin and I worked together, we got the ditch all done, the culverts are in. So the city, we did all that work. And right now they have the culvert across the driveway and it's marked. So we're waiting for our contractor to come in. They were in, one time they pulled out, it was too wet, and they're gonna hopefully come back this week, but Mother Nature's not helping us right now. So we're hoping to hear next week or the week after to do our portion of that work and get that water to go to the west. So that's really where we sit. The city was just going to say they were great to work with. They bought a lot of the product, they took care of the stuff, so kudos to those guys over there as well. And we're just waiting for weather. So
One thing that I can put into there is the relationship with the city. We just got to, it's awesome right now. We want it to continue to be awesome. One thing we're trying to do with this project is to service our neighbors and to make sure that what was all created, that we're not flooding, private houses. So it's something that is a top priority. We're aware of why we're doing it, and we're going to get it done.
Yep, that was the only thing that got pushed back a little bit.
It did.
Otherwise, that concludes my building committee.
Boy, nice pictures of the parking lot with the new lights.
Yes.
Yeah,
That is
it's
awesome.
a nice change in that back line. You can see, you know, there's a little bit of dark spot to the center parking lot because it's reached so far, but, yeah, the LEDs really brighten up nice and, you know, it's
Really
a
nice.
well addition.
Many compliments from parents
Yep.
and students.
Awesome.
They're always a lot of kids were nervous after school having to walk out there, so thanks for approving that. So late at night.
Okay, thank you. Personnel.
Okay, Personnel Committee met tonight, and we discussed the current job vacancies in the district, which there are two, a special education assistant in the middle school and a special education assistant in the elementary school, and that position has been offered and accepted, so it's currently in the process. We also had a discussion and possible recommendation for the approval of additional temporary regular education assistant position in the high school, and the committee unanimously approved that position. We also had item number 5C, discussion of possible recommendation of additional resignations, retirees, and hires, and we now have, as of this afternoon, a new letter of resignation from our food services director, Alyssa Havda. So everybody should have that letter that was given out to us as well, and we unanimously accepted that letter of resignation as well. At this time, we have no new extracurricular hires nor future agenda items.
Yeah, in the interest of no surprises, I did find out just this midday today about that particular resignation, so we were opportunistic in bringing it to the board, and that we want to post as quickly as possible. But I have full assurances from Mrs. Havda that she will help with the transition, and including the job posting. She has some very good skills that way, to help us in this mid-year transition.
Okay, thank you. Finance.
So do we have to vote? I mean, obviously we have the voucher list and the treasurer's report.
Those are sections, yeah.
But the other two issues we need a motion and a second, we have to vote on.
No one, because we already did it up there, so carry it
Okay.
over.
Yeah, we pushed since we made the consent agendas, we'll just do the one vote for all of the consent agendas.
Yes.
Gotcha. So this evening, the finance committee met. We discussed, primarily, we spent some time talking about enrollment and the current status of our district. And there was a lot of back and forth and roll this over and subtract this and divide by pi, but it turns out we increased enrollment by 21 students for this year, so that's a good thing. There are recommendations that the district is looking at coming to us with, especially in 4K where we had a reduction in students. To come to us to have a conversation about that. I encouraged them. I said this board loves to talk about 4K. So we should stay tuned for future things to come on some ideas on how to make our school appeal to the residents that live here and continue to have an increased student population. We discussed, and ultimately the finance committee approved a request to purchase a new radio system. That in front of me, but it was for $21,000 and some change. It's for 30 radios and a repeater to switch to digital. All the current analog radios will stay functioning within the district and be used in independent buildings. Some concerns that were voiced by myself with regards to that are whether the system will work and if we buy it before it works. So Brady assured us that he's going to work with the vendor, which is Northway out of Wausau. And they're going to, based on our approval, they're willing to come set up a repeater so that this can be demoed and tested before we make that purchase. So contingent or Brady's commitment to us was if it doesn't work, he's not going to pull a purchase order and buy something that doesn't work. He'll come back to us with a different recommendation or some different ideas sometime in the future. The Finance Committee also approved a request to spend just shy of $10,000 on a sound system on the Kresge Pool. That motion and second and vote is contingent upon, which you'll see further down in the acceptance of a donation to the district of $5,000. We have asked Mr. Munoz to go to that anonymous donor and seek their approval to use their donation, which they sent just for the pool, to be used specifically on a stereo system. At this as long as they're willing to have that donation used for that purpose and they'd be satisfied with it, we approve that request.
And I'll likely have that conversation tonight.
So hopefully that's the case, and then everyone can jam out to their tunes. Item number 9, which is discussion possible decision approval of monthly voucher list.
That's
We don't vote
9
on
and
that
10.
now. Oh,
Nope.
sorry.
That's okay,
Separate.
yep. So now I am seeking a motion to approve.
Also,
Okay.
I have a question. So on a sound system, so if they don't accept that, then that'll have to be brought forth.
It'll be brought back next month.
Correct.
It'll be brought back to finance.
Sorry.
That's
What-
okay.
I just want to add, one of the things that we discussed there and asked our administration to do is, that would be funded out of Fund 80, which is not our school district budget. It's for things that affect the community, but ultimately we're tasked with the responsibility to manage those tax dollars. So things like the Kresge Center and the pickleball courts and the pool, we asked for, forecast for us all the things that need to be fixed with these, and we discussed the soundproofing tiles, the filtration system, there's other things within the pool. I know Brady had talked to me, I'm pretty sure he could spend as much money as we gave him in the auditorium.
Yeah.
So bringing us requests to spend Fund $80 without us having the whole picture of all the needs, so we can differentiate needs and wants and start to come up with a timeline and give some direction to our administration. That was our request to see. Show us what you're thinking, based on what you know, what are the things that we need to purchase, because the potential exists. We might not approve something that we think is a good idea because we know there's another bill coming in 2 months that would utilize those funds, so that was part of that conversation.
And part of that further conversation that I had with finances, that we started to look at those things. We don't have any hard dollars about it. We know there's some roof and some roof drain issues in both the pool and in the auditorium. What level they are, what the expense is, we don't have that yet. Sand filters, we know for sure residential needs to be commercial. There's some things like that. So we've done some digging that way. We'll get more specific on it as the months go on. But I'll be definitely bringing something like that to the board in 2 or 3 months' time.
Okay. Okay, I apologize, but, well, I'm gonna let you finish, I tried to get a second in first, but go ahead.
You go second before, I think you should follow it before you have discussion anyway.
Right, okay. So we do have a motion by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Matt. Further discussion?
Yep, so in the write-up about the sound system, it doesn't even reference the donation. So in your meeting, I'm guessing you decided that you didn't like the expenditure of 10 grand, $9,872 for the sound system, unless half of it came from the donation.
Correct.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me, so,
Yep.
because it wasn't referenced in here, you know, and because that wasn't the way it was presented originally, so.
Right, well, and that's what Matt was kind of talking about a little bit, we were trying to say, what's gonna come forward with all the other expenditures that could be coming in that area, so.
Yeah, I heard that too. so.
Yeah, when the anonymous donor came in, it was a general pool donation.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will carry. Right now, Matt, item 9.
Oh, 9, the voucher list. Full disclosure, we ran very short of time, so our voucher list update was, there's nothing spectacular out of the ordinary on it, a relatively normal month. So with that being said, everybody has a copy of it. I'll seek a motion to approve the
I'll
voucher.
second it.
We have a motion by Mike and a second by,
I'll
It's a roll-
Yeah.
It's a roll call.
and a second.
Motion. We didn't have a motion
You
yet.
still have to have a motion.
You had to move. He didn't move.
We're good.
You're
Thanks
good.
for the motion, Mike.
You made the motion.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, you can't.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Bauman.
Yes.
Yes.
Bauman. Yes. Lewis. Gorman.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hermany.
Yes.
Kaiser.
Yes.
Maple.
Yes.
Zebro.
Yes.
All yes.
Motion carries. Item number 10, the treasurer's report. Same situation, we were assured we're doing okay and there's still money in the bank, so that's a good thing. And the school district got paid in September.
Sure.
It's always a good thing to get paid, so with that being said, I will make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
And then I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call vote?
Hanson,
Yes.
Hermany,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Maple,
Yes.
Zebro,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Lewis, Gorman.
Yes.
All yes.
Okay, moving on to item 11, special presentation. 11A, discussion, adverse childhood experience.
I'm gonna call Mrs. Zimmerman up, just to run through briefly. This is something that is, it's actually very good information because it's something that's used on a daily basis. But to have this sort of information for the board, that is something that is operational for educators in terms of our use of it to identify risk. But I'll let Mary take it away.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So adverse childhood experiences, everybody calls it ACEs, and so that's what it means, is the first slide. Basically, what happens is that based on different childhood experiences that people have, they're at higher risk for chronic health, for risky behaviors, just for early death, a lot of low life potential events happening to them. And so what it is that it's a list of 10 questions, and based on the questions that person answers, and at the very end, I have the test, so if you want to take it yourself, you can to find out what your number is. So it goes from 1 to 10, and the greater the number is, the more at risk that child is, or that adult is. But basically, 1 in 7 children have experienced abuse or neglect. And so it's really a high number, and a lot of the questions pertain to those areas. Out of the 10 questions on the ACEs questionnaire, 67% of the adults have at least one concern, and 25 have at least 3 concerns on the questions out of 10. I listed some of the adverse childhood experiences that may cause you to be a higher score. I won't read all of them, but it has a lot to do with what's happened in their lifetime. So the higher the score, the more at risk that person is, and the more long-term consequences may occur in their life. So a lot of volunteers are trainers that teach people different curriculums and different things that people can learn about the ACEs and brain development. Like I said, that you can take your own quiz and kind of see where you're at. And ways to prevent long-term effects is reducing stress, building positive relationships, which is always a huge factor in education, and also giving them tools to strengthen their life skills. So Mr. Munoz had mentioned that people had questions about what ACEs was, so I thought I'd make it short and sweet and just kind of explain briefly what it was about. Any questions?
So
Yeah.
this is, do our students take this quiz?
Right now, we don't have our students take it, but it is a piece of our mental health that we are going to be looking at. Some of the individual counselors and school psychs may use it with an individual student, but we don't have any students taking it.
So the purpose of this is if you recognize a student or for whatever reason they take this and they score really high with an ACE score,
Right.
that might be a student who we would then seek out to provide some interventions so that they're less likely to suffer the forecasted consequences.
You got it, exactly. So right now, we're working with our district mental health group and our new mental health navigator on coming up with a referral pathways, and so we can figure out which kids need what services, and this will be a tool that will help us.
At what grade level would you introduce that?
I would say this is probably more middle to high. You could have some kids maybe at 3rd grade, but it tends to get into some really tough areas, and it might be difficult questions for little ones to answer.
Okay, I was just.
Yeah, no, good question.
Yeah, I've seen it used in a high school environment, actually, one that I ran for a lot of years. So this is something we built in. Using ACEs, there's a lot of ways to go about it. It's a lot of groundwork for counselors and school psychologists, our internal mental health people, but there's a way to attack this, and there's some decent research out there now about how schools can approach this in order to be proactive, like Matt was alluding to, about some of these negative childhood experiences, that, adverse childhood experiences that we want to mitigate with services.
And it's just like our trauma-sensitive schools. Right now, we have a training that we're sending all of our people services and our assistant principals to, and also Eric Krause on trauma-sensitive. We're partnering up with DC Everest, but it happens to be our mental health navigator. And so she was doing the presentation, and so we had, before we contracted with her, let her go and do those 2 trainings, because she already had all schools doing it there. And so she's one of the presenters, and so we're sending everybody who works right in the forefront with all our very challenging kids to get some training. It's a cheaper training.
A lot of potential with this.
So I had asked
sorry.
to learn a little bit more about this, I think at the last or the prior meeting. And
Okay.
Judy Burdan, who most of you know, is involved with or in charge of, I don't know, the Head Start.
She's one of the assistants there,
Okay.
yes.
And she had indicated to me, and so if you looked at the quiz, it's in your first 18 years of life, have you had any of these 10 things or how many of them? And she said that the average child coming out of Head Start has 3 already.
They're a very high need population. We also have a really high special ed population right now at Head Start.
Yep.
Yeah, I see Judy quite often.
My previous pupil services team presented at the state counselors conference specifically about this and how to attack it inside of a school environment. So there's some material out there, not just by them, but by other groups that are, being proactive. And we are as well with the Mental Health Navigator. That's a big push. That's a big connected piece to where we're going with this.
Mary, I don't know exactly when that conference is, I went to, I don't know if you were there with me, where, they talked about, instead of always trying to dig up past experience to try to, how do we build them forward and not so much keep that negative feeling, how do you get past that point where you start building forward?
Right. And that's what the trauma-sensitive schools teaches. Also, even on our IEPs, we have a section that talks about positive behavioral interventions. And so that's the focus, that we're always trying to find positive ways to change the behavior instead of doing like the Band-Aids, where the crisis types of things happen. Which they do happen, but we try to prevent them as much as possible. And by the way, our Pride Center is doing really well.
Also connected to, very much connected to this. That's good.
Awesome. Any other questions?
One just thought I had that's kind of in this realm, same church, different pew, is I would be really interested in having our school district look at a process that they're testing in Wausau this year that I think is great. It's called Handle with Care program. And what the Handle with Care program is that if our officers or sheriff's deputy respond to a domestic at 2 o'clock in the morning and all the kids are out, or some type of incident, they have a number that they can text.
Okay.
It's super simple. Hey, here's the student. They answer some really simple questions. There's no details about it. But the message gets to their teacher at the start of school to say, if little Johnny comes to school and he's not right, he's a Handle with Care kid. Teacher doesn't need to know what the issues were. They just know there's something that law enforcement wants them to just pump the brakes a little bit if the kid's falling asleep in class or there's something out of the ordinary. And it's, at first glance, it's a great program, and it's not hard to set up, so I would just throw that out as something that might
If
be
you
worth
have
looking into.
like more information on it, email me, that'd be great. We can look at the budget. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Item 11B, discussion, Mosinee Athletics annual update. Casey.
Yep, I'm calling Casey Smith, our new athletic director and community activities director, to take a look at everything and run through this with you. If you have any questions at the end, feel free to kind of collect those, and let's get going here, Casey.
Excellent. Thank you for accepting some of this a little late. We had a report from the previous meeting, and I was involved with activities that night, unable to be here. This is more on the agenda. It shows annual report. This is more of a last 2 months report since I just started with the district. First thing I didn't put on here, and after sitting in front of so many people, the one thing that I've noticed at the beginning, the kids in this district are amazing. It has been a joy getting to know some of these kids at events. The Hey Mr. Smith is awesome, and that is not something that I've seen everywhere I've been, so I just want to make note of that. Item of focus, when I first came on board, as you see, one main objective is to increase participation numbers in every sport that we're offering. And so some action steps, reviewing that data, I'm gonna provide you with some of it that we'll be looking at, that I'll be looking at as we go through in the coming months. You can look over that as you choose. We're also including some conference data here, what other schools have given me. Rhinelander and Merrill were quick to offer, other schools are not necessarily giving that up quite yet. But it kind of gives you an idea of our fall sports for 2019 in comparison to 2 districts that are nearby, and how we kind of shake out. The highlighted 60 for volleyball, I put that. This year we had high volleyball numbers, and coach had a suggestion to offer up a practice squad so we weren't in a situation of cutting, which is something we'll have to talk about in the future. Football for Rhinelander is highlighted because that was a typo earlier, it said 25. So we passed that, we have more than 25 guys. Down below we got participation numbers, kind of show you what the future looks like for the fall next year. We have the middle school numbers there as a peak. And then the 3-year participation numbers at Mosinee, what I put in there is numbers that we had from the past, 16, 17, 18, 19, 19, 20. And as you look through there, the stars are spring sports are preliminary. There's some winter sports in there that are preliminary because kids are constantly coming in or going out, depending on their scenario. But it is something that each coach will have a conversation with me about things that we can do to increase numbers. I met with all the fall coaches and the majority of the high school coaches staff, and things discussed there in those meetings were vision of the program, goals of the team, strengths, areas of improvement, and then pushing some team bonding upon them. My history with coaching, the team bonding is something that sometimes coaches forget about because they're busy, and I'm really asking them to look at that as a way to bring some fun into the program, helping those participation numbers. We talked about staff changes that they could see or had within their program. The head coaches have control of that staff, and so I'm expecting them to let me know if they're having issues. Obviously I'm supervising as well, but they should be the first line. And then talk with them expectations of sportsmanship. I want our teams to be the ones that the officials comment on a regular basis for the positive, and that has happened already as I've taken reports from our football officials after each game in a written format, and it's been awesome. Transportation, actually met with Diane very early on, and we're reviewing transportation processes. There's some things that we're going to be able to streamline for my assistant in regards to her and how she puts through requisitions for every single trip versus having an open account. And I had mentioned at that time that we'd be working with some other schools, and I believe in the first week of November we're actually going up to Rhinelander to look at how they're doing things there for best practices with other schools within the conference. Athletic event worker payment, found some issues there. Some of these people are working for us for several months and not getting paid until the end. And talking to Michelle about that. We had some concerns, so we're working on correcting that. Allows me to get better workers when they are getting paid in a timely manner. Looking at also with the event workers, reviewing what they're doing, creating stipends per event, and I'll provide you that data before we ever go to that, versus an hourly to better attract some quality workers, and combining some of the positions where I see people doing things where I think, you know what, you could be doing 2, I can pay you a little bit more, but still be less than the 2 people that are sitting behind a desk. Been talking and reviewing, recruiting and interviewing coaches for open positions, and I've had head coaches working on it as well. Back when the first report for the board, we had a problem with the scoreboard. That was fixed quickly. The co-curricular code of conduct and the coach's handbook, in my opinion, has got some work to be done on it. I've done this before in previous positions, and one of the things that worked really well when we did that was to put together a parent-coach advisory committee to improve the handbooks, and we expect to begin that process in January of 2020. So this is in a new set of rules for Mr. Smith. Here are 2 training days for my assistant, Michelle Pazorski. Thursday is one of them. We're actually going up to Merrill. We're going to finalize some training for us to launch what we have available to us already that is just maybe being underutilized, which is the Our School Facilities Scheduler. This is a software that the school board or school already had, and we just have some capabilities in there that we can take advantage of. Currently, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, some of our youth coaches and our high school coaches are working off of a Google Sheet calendar, and we're going to be able to replace that with something so we don't have this double dipping of people going into the same gym at the same time, because we are trying to marry 2 different systems. It'll all be in one place So we are gonna be meeting with Merrill, who's been using that facility for quite a while, in addition to the training Michelle's been doing already online.
Just to jump in there real quick, our school is pretty much an industry standard. So,
Yeah.
I mean, our school, it's a very big deal for an athletic director. You've seen Mr. Ruby, former athletic director of the current middle school principal. It's a very big deal from a scheduling perspective and the work of an athletic director. It's a very big deal.
Yeah, and it's about time and making sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be. Our school helps, whether it's a facility being rented out by somebody, from their community, or making sure that the right team is coming to the right gym, and that the parents, most importantly, the parents can see it. And I'll make note of that in just a second. Our school facility schedule also will be allowing us to create accounts for the people that want to use our facilities. And in order to create that account, they have to give us that certificate of insurance, which has, in some situations, has not been happening. So if somebody's coming in to host a wrestling invite, we now won't be able to happen unless they have provided us with the proper documentation. And so we're going to be eliminating some major risk in that regards. Our school facility is going to allow these people to be able to request times and be able to see that it's actually open versus having to email, have Michelle look at 2 different calendars to find out if it's there. They won't have to ask for something, it'll be already there.
Right, well, before I forget, you're talking about that insurance. It's like if like a private group, like a church group wants to have like a open gym day or something like on a Saturday or a Sunday, probably a Saturday. A couple people at work asked me about it. I knew the insurance deal, but is there a cost for that too?
Well, certificate of insurance, anybody that's using our facility should have to have a certificate of insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a cost for them for that?
No, for that they got, but then to use the gym, is there a cost or?
It depends on the scenario. So if they're, the way I've been explained to it, if they're a member of the community and their organization is serving our community kids, then we give that over for free. If they are a volleyball club from Wisconsin Rapids and they have nobody from Mosinee on the team, they're not using the facility. They have to pay for it. So we would charge depending on what they're asking for. I know there was a club asking for use of the turf softball field, and they didn't. I talked to Mr. Jamro from the city, and they didn't have enough Mosinee kids involved with that program. They're going to be using it extensively, and so I think it was $300 for the hour, or $300 for a 3-hour period. So about $150 per practice if they were running an hour and a half.
So the gym would be close to that then.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. I haven't had too many requests where we're actually going to be charging because most of the time, they find that out. Maybe they had it free in the past, but we're not charging people who are part of the community, or if they're running a civic organization that's based in Mosinee.
So you're pretty much referencing like an AAU team and there's one Mosinee kid and they're like, let me see if I can get you our gym.
That's not a thing.
That would be a charge.
Exactly. Right.
But if it's 9 Mosinee kids and 1
Yeah,
Stratford
then we're going to get them in there, in a level, order of, access. Obviously, the high school sports in season come first, and there's a pecking order, chain of command. Let's get back to 2. Did that 3, requires user to provide the documentations. The other piece of this is now allowing blackout facilities to protect against, for example, fine arts and athletic event conflicts. So there's ways to utilize the software so that when I accept a contract from another school, it can tell me, hey, you got an event that night where a bunch of kids are going to be in a band concert, and so we can avoid those conflicts with this new with using the software that was available to us. Last piece, the partial day at Rhinelander, is where we'll be launching full use of the Our School calendar. That component is something that we use extensively, but I don't think that the community, the end users, the parents are really familiar with how they, what that can do for them. We have the capability of using this tool for our parents for every sport, every type of event within the community. And so what I've been doing actually last 2 months is creating the proper schedules. For example, some of our middle school sports, where volleyball has 8 teams, we had 1 schedule. So parents were already communicating, where's my daughter at? I'm like, that's a good question. Is she on Mosinee White B, 7th grade, or is she on the Mosinee Purple 8th grade A team? So we now have those, and people will be able to see those different schedules in our school. And then I reference training the community with a social media post. I plan to make a video that shows them how to sign up for those recommendations, for those text messages, so that if we have to cancel a game, hit one button, and all those parents will get a text message, the officials, anybody at the bus company will get a message that this has been canceled, so we're not making 40 phone calls.
And is there an app associated with this?
It's well, it's not an app. It's actually you set up your account for a text message system. So has anybody used it? Anybody even seen it? One or two. And
Yeah.
so it's called Notify Me. If you go onto our athletic calendar and you go off to the bottom right and you click on Notify Me, you can go in there and you can sign up for your sport. We have a lot of people that don't know that is there for them.
Big deal.
Big deal.
For families with kids all over the place.
So this will allow streamline for event workers also. So my event workers have been put on notice that they're going to be in our school, so they'll be getting notifications from our school about when they work and how they work versus me looking at a separate spreadsheet and emailing them, hey, you work Thursday. It's already going to be in, so they're going to get those notifications automatically. So if I'm not there all day, they don't miss the warning that they're coming away.
I want to thank you for taking a good look at the department and making all those changes so
Yes.
quickly, so that was awesome.
Thanks.
What about questions? A lot about our school, but I've worked with it in multiple districts. It is an industry, pretty common. I've only worked with athletic departments who utilize it, so it's a really important tool. Any other questions at all related to that or anything else with athletics, even if it's not on the sheets?
Sure, I get that you're still in the first couple months, but have you had any opportunity to attend any of the parent-run organizations, booster clubs?
I have. I've gotten to a couple of them. And I've had some great conversations there. I'm looking obviously to get to more. I did tell one club mentioned to me that, well, we maybe only saw a predecessor 2 times a year. I'm like, wow, we saw him twice. That's pretty good. Given how many organizations there are within booster clubs, and a lot of them are, picking nights where they're not competing, right? Where the kids aren't competing, which also means it might be a night where, I'm actually not at school. So ones that I haven't been able to get to, I've asked, can you send me some updates on it so that I can, see what you're doing and offer help going into it. So yeah, I have had a couple meetings, with those booster clubs.
One of the things that, I can speak to a particular booster club that they might have the financial resources available to sponsor coaches going to continuing education or developmental clinics or conferences. And I know that through one of them that I was involved in, there was, hey, I'd really love to go to the Nike coaching deal down in Chicago. I'm like, well, why don't you? They're like, it's $1,000. I'm like, well, I went to the president of the association. I said, do we have $1,000 to send him to this deal? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you can go. I mean, it was that easy, but it required communication to accomplish that. So I would encourage that to be part of the conversation because they use our school to raise a bunch of money and then money sits in an account and it's there. What better way for our kids than to have like the highest trained, best educated coaches?
Yep, that and facilities, which Steve knows we'll be asking those booster clubs to put up some dollars real soon for some products that we need to help with.
One of the criticisms I've heard in the past is don't just show up and ask us for money though. So show up and participate and be a member and
Come back
partner
next
with
month
us.
and ask for money?
Just don't show up and ask for money.
You said too, you're trying to get the numbers up, what kind of tools are you using for that?
Well, I think from my experience as a coach, I think sometimes our high school coaches need to be brought back down to the reality of what the kids can actually handle. Okay, we have a lot of these athletes that are going into 3 sports and then, they're gonna jump into one of our clubs. And so I talk to my coaches about fun and that team bonding piece. Yes, they're gonna work hard, they obviously are already doing that, we're competing at a high level across the board this fall. But those conversations with coaches are, hey, what are you doing to make this a family-based team? Where there's some bonding, where there's some fun, where if Johnny doesn't get the play time, he's still enjoying his time here. It's kind of like, the conversation with volleyball coaches where we said, hey, let's make a practice squad. Because if you tell these girls that they're gonna be on JV3, and they're not gonna get in on the court hardly at all, and you set an expectation you're never gonna be able to get to. They want a practice squad, let them have a little freedom to maybe not be there once in a while, okay, but they're still playing the game, and who knows, maybe they get better and become one of your varsity athletes in 3 years. So I guess, that piece of it, and then, obviously looking at, success and competition of their schedules. We have some concerns about our middle school football and who they're playing, and are we losing players because they went out and got pounded this fall? quite frankly. But it was only 3 years ago where we were the ones doing the pounding after I looked into it. So we don't want to jump out of that conference because maybe this year it hurt, because it's not easy to get back those games. So paying attention to those competitions for them, making sure we're finding opportunities for them.
So how many freshmen do we have out for football?
Freshman number, I don't have it broken, go back up on those numbers, I don't have it broken down by grade. But I will tell you, I've had more focus on how many freshmen, or how many 8th graders we have for next year, which is 18.
Sorry?
18. So we have a nice group coming in this fall. And that was allowed us to commit to having a JV2 football team for this next year, which we did have to back out of. I don't even think it was midway through this season when we had to say, hey, you know, throw out the white towel, we can't do JV2 as a safety issue at this point. So next year, JV2 is happening and we have that schedule already built.
I seem to lose, anyway, from my recollection, was from 8th grade to freshman high school, it seemed like you lose.
You do. I mean, in every sport. You know, and then it's cyclical to see. I know from having conversations that this past year, freshman, there was a high number of boys in soccer. So quite a few went that route. But there was a club team that was servicing those kids and that maybe drew them to that sport.
Any other questions? Thanks, Casey. Item 12, discussion, school board superintendent communication.
Yep, there's quite a bit going on here. Let me just jump into my notes really quick here. First thing does have to do with Fund 80. I've had a lot of discussions with the pool, so I'm always glad to have pool patrons at the school board meeting. I have been stopping in pretty regularly. They can say that, pretty regularly in the pool. Haven't hopped into the pool with them yet, but that's on a future agenda item, I think. I'll be in there again tomorrow. So,
You are not.
well, that doesn't count. Hot tub doesn't count right here. So in any event, I kind of
So
wrote
if you jump in the river in January.
one of the things I list in this particular part of my communications is that one of the largest expenses in Fund 80, the Community Service Fund, is expenses paid for the YMCA to manage and operate the environment. It's something I continue to look at in terms of dollars and cents with respect to that piece. And obviously I'll bring all that before the board, but some of this came up in finance actually, so I'd already been putting some back work into, you can see community theater, a lot of different community groups, and something we're going to need to look at in the 2021 budget cycle about how we address some of the issues, community issues, based on that 25, 26-year-old facility that is definitely going to need some upkeep and some maintenance. So it's kind of all part of that, one of those communications. Been talking a lot, point two, with the MEA President, Crystal Zastro, about some things with our end-of-year recognition. We're going to make some changes this year in order to kind of go about it a little bit different. Still honor retirees and those receiving Teacher and Support Staff of the Year and Educator of the Year, but then shift those getting recognition for 5, 10, 20 years, 25 years to that first day of school conference. It's something that I've done in a previous district and it was really positive. We got the whole district there, and we do want to congratulate those with that many years of service. This year will be a transition year, so we'll probably celebrate them twice because we don't want to miss anybody or make anybody feel bad with a good change. Strategic planning, I had several things in there about strategic planning process. I've been meeting with a lot of people. We have about 60 community members together, including the mayor. I was out meeting with the airport yesterday extensively. Some members of the airport. We have several community members together, along with almost every municipality that serves the Mosinee School District. So it's almost 60 at this point, so I'm excited about that. I should be able to get, of course, with the board support as well, already committed to the strategic plan. So we put a lot of back work into it, several meetings with Nexus in order to get some adjustments and some idea behind where we're going with that first meeting on November 12th. So I think we have some structure behind that, so I've been putting some work and pre-work into getting ready for that meeting. But the group right now is about 60 strong, which is what they were essentially looking for. Point 4, Nate and I had a meeting with the Beijing Zhongshan International School. I think they did pretty good with that. Perfect. At the end of September. It's actually an interesting meeting about an F1 visa program. It's an interesting thing. We don't know where it's at this point and to this minute, but essentially we do a lot with J1 visa programs right now. We have any number of different exchange students that come from around the world to experience America and of course the Mosinee School District. An F1 visa program is a little bit different in that we can't claim them in per pupil aid, but they pay tuition. So a lot of districts, not a lot, there's a number of districts, including Marshfield, Janesville, and some districts that I'm familiar with who do F1 visa programs through the State Department. And it's interesting because it's another way to come at giving a global experience to our students. So this was an interesting aspect. They are looking for an F1 visa approach, but it's even if we don't end up doing anything, and obviously I bring that before the board before we make any sort of commitment like that, but even if we don't do anything with the Beijing Zhongshan International School, an F1 visa program has always been interesting to me over the years. As a principal of 18 years, I had always worked with a J1 program, just because it was easier and it's, there's quite a bit of things with it that there's less hoops to jump through with the State Department and Homeland Security, but still giving a good experience to our students and the students that are coming in. So, next thing, and this was in personnel, I believe, that Christy Held is no longer going to be the summer school principal, so she's graciously asked to help us transition to a new staff member in that position. Actually, it's a pretty big thing with our per pupil and some of the numbers that Michelle was talking about. So we're excited and very thankful to Christy to be able to help us transition to the next member. I know we have some people interested in district already, so I'm excited to get that posting out there and to get the interviews going. Ms. Crone is working on that. I visited 4K sites along with, we have a different visit schedule intentionally. So Mrs. Caldwell and I are doing visit schedules. She does them on alternating weeks and I go on different weeks. So we're kind of coordinating our visits to the 4K sites. It's pretty exciting to get out to all these sites and talk to them specifically about how they're doing. And then my seeing the interaction with the kids. We've created a budget for 4K inside of operations in order to make sure that they're able to get something that they need, books and materials, these sorts of things. They've never had budgets before at their 4K sites. That seemed a little bit odd to me, so we created a budget for them. So that we've had good outreach with them. We've had good conversations with our off-sites and of course our on-site. So I think that relationship continues to build. One thing that's already done, that you saw this in your board connection notes, that we've actioned this with the city. Like I said earlier in comments, we have a great relationship with the city of Mosinee. It's really very, very good. So one of the things we were looking for is this helps us a great deal, but it also helps the city. We're providing wireless access 24/7, 365 to the ice arena. Now some of that has to do with our safety needs and safety requirements utilizing that facility. We also use it for graduation, and we do have other events there that are school-sponsored events. But in talking to the city, they were, they're very agreeable with this agreement that there's no money out to them, and they do a lot for us, especially recently. So this is something that was a win for both of our environments. They can utilize it, the Wi-Fi within our system. So Brady was key, and I sent him over there to make sure we got that done, so that's done. So we're also doing the remote hotspots for St. Paul's. That's all security related with our remote evacuation sites. So those devices are purchased and I think tested already, and we're ready to go. So those sorts of things were, the baseline of that was security. Strategic planning, I put there in there twice, sorry about that. United Way campaign. So we've doubled our donations to the United Way campaign. Pretty excited about that. I think we can do better than that even in next year. We did a packing event. Thank you to Deputy Chief Barnes for also being part of that kickoff, along with several other people. So a lot of thanks to that. We had a nice United Way campaign, like I said, double. And I think we can do better than that next year. It's always nice. They do a lot for us. We have some outreach with them. They have programs and clothes programs and several different things. Food for Needy in Mosinee. We had a packing event at the start of the school year. Specifically, we packed food for the needy, and it went specifically to students in Mosinee, which I thought was wonderful. And that was with the United Way. We did it on-site with all staff that first day. Next thing, a couple bills out there, a couple big ones. And I'd have to check to see if this was become law. My understanding from our legal was that Assembly Bill 195 was going to become law. And essentially, I wanted to put this out there, is this is a licensure piece that we are working through channels about, but essentially what it does is it makes it easier for potential teachers to get licensure out of district, out of state, than in-state. And so in other words, there's these hoops you have to jump through called EdTPA and all these other things. Those that are young teachers, or you have to go through this process at the state of Wisconsin. And it's tough. But this particular bill makes it easier for Wisconsin students to leave the state than it is to actually go to our state schools to receive teacher certification. Obviously, this is a problem for those that need teachers in order to run a district. 75% of our operating expense goes to teachers. We want that, we need those people. So this is something that through my professional organizations and CISA and groups of superintendents, we're saying, well, if they can do it out of state this way, let's make it the same way in state so that our best teachers or future teachers aren't leaving the state of Wisconsin. So that's Assembly Bill 195. A couple of the tobacco bills in there I pulled out of some legal briefs. Vaping, it's definitely on the state legislative agenda with respect to how to attack that. A couple different assembly bills out of Republican, out of, it looks like Lodi, about Assembly Bill 422 and 364. So they're all kind of related to vaping and tobacco and kind of the onset of the vaping epidemic, which is quite an issue in the state. So I wanted you to have information about that. Aside from that, it's been a great month, it's been a lot going on, but one of my commitments, and a lot of parents are talking about it, that our administrative team is doing a great job being physically present, not just in the buildings during the day, but also during lunch and at bus time. And it's something that I'm trying to do myself. It's a little bit difficult between 3 buildings, but I do try to have kind of a rotation. Some that are also parents will see me up, like this morning at the elementary school, kind of schedule myself. Those that have access to my calendar say, oh, he's at the elementary school, he's at the middle school, he's at the high school, lunch duty, whatever it is. But I know our staff, our administrative staff is doing the same thing, so just want to be doing what they're doing that as well as the kids in that environment. So it's something that I'm committed to and that I know that our administrative team is equally committed to. Any questions at all?
No question.
Yes, sir.
More of a comment on the very first item.
Yep.
Related to the Kresge Center. And I would say Kresge Center broadly, but in particular, I suppose, Kresge Center Pool. One of the advantages of institutional memory and involvement in the school board is that I'm actually going to use the word promise or commitment. And I know those are just, they're words and phrases, and we all bring to our understanding what that might mean a conscious understanding, of course, when it relates to schools or businesses is included, is that, you know, future boards, this board, is not bound by verbal promises to a community from the 1990s, okay? But there are a lot of people in our community who would absolutely remember the promised access. I wrote down 3 phrases. Access, use, and upkeep. Access, use, and upkeep to the Kresge. Due to the support that the community gave to the school district after the very generous donation by the Kresge family that led to the passage of the referendum. So I wasn't thinking about that when I first read this report that came out, but and I don't think that your report as presented or spoken tonight and your additions to what you wrote suggested to me that you wouldn't want this board to honor whatever the understanding of that might mean. But I add that for the context of the others who, in some cases, didn't even live here then. So I just add that to the overall dialogue as it represents my memory of the 1990s when we were attempting to pass and failed, and attempted and succeeded at passing the referendum that resulted in what we have.
Yeah, I thank you, because I think access, use, and upkeep are some things, I'm dialed into upkeep
Got it.
and free use, actually.
And free use, yes.
Because that's not totally what's going on even in summer. I've kind of found out, because I've been sort of watching, I've only been here since like June, but in summer there's like money for this, and it's an interesting, piece, and they give money to the Y, and it's not really free all the time. I just as well be free all the time. That it's wonderful that during like September and October and November, it's great that people can just go in and they can use the facility if you live in the school district. I think that's great.
And there was always an understanding that the school's use of the facilities came first.
Right.
But given that the operations of the school don't use the facilities 24/7.
Right. I think it's very possible that there's going to be an opportunity for this board to provide a higher level of service to our community for less money. A higher level of service for less money. I really believe that, and I've been I've been in the pool enough, and I've been in the auditorium enough that I'm starting to know some of the community members very well that utilize this facility on a regular basis, and I think that we can do much more with less, to be honest.
Steve, could I just ask, I know I asked a few years ago what the operating cost for the pool is a year, if you would have that number sometime. I mean, when you got time, just give us.
Labor, that's easily figured. The hard part I have is that our heating system that takes care of our pool itself and all their hand equipment is tied to our main system, so I can't mirror or break that out. That's how it's designed. But just to the point of the age of the facilities, I can just say that, when you look at the mechanical side of the pool, that's all at that age already. Things starting to break, even from the PVC stuff, get brittle after that time. So, we are going to look eventually at how we're going to address that.
It was like $200,000.
I know, if we're doing it right.
So Steve, I've looked into this to the point where I've called different districts that run pools, and some of the pool conversations that we have had with, for example, at Schwabenheim specifically, like they're able to have different metered areas. To get to your question specifically, they actually meter it differently so that when the community is using it, they can say, okay, it's from 1 to 5 o'clock, that goes to the Fund 80, but the rest of it isn't. That's part of what Steve is talking about. We're just covering right now with his services and for the services of our clerical, so not a clerical, but our janitorial services, our building and grounds. So one of the things that I'm looking at is the dollars and cents of it, but I think we can provide better service to our community members for less money. I really do. And that's something that I want to be bringing in the next couple of months.
That's all we got to build across the city street, a partnership with the city. They never wanted to relinquish that right to that street. That was a fire lane.
Right.
And that's how that happened.
Yeah,
The city pool was there.
Right.
The city didn't want it anymore anyway. So, I mean,
Understood that.
That's the main thing.
Understand that for
They
sure.
say shit all the money there.
And I've been having some wonderful conversations, and I don't have as much history because I didn't live here, but some of the things that I am learning as I go is that I would love to maintain or better services for our community members for less money. I really think it's doable. We might have to make some tweaks and some adjustments, but I'm certain that the community would be behind that.
One last thing I would just add is that, I don't know, the Boys and Girls Clubs, President Wassa, not President, Executive Director, is brand new. They have a brand new ED. I can get you his name. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but we've had the relationship over the years with the Boys and Girls Club and also, of course, the Y for sure. Those relationships as EDs have changed over the years at the Wassa-based primarily facilities or institutions. Have sometimes been a very integral part of the Mosinee operation, has been a very integral part, and other times it hasn't been so great. But I would encourage you to, I'll get you the contact information. I know him, I just can't think of his name right now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 13, old business, discussion and possible decision on the energy exemption surplus fund. So that was just giving us the price on the 69
Yeah, we didn't, the last board meeting really didn't have or when this came up, it might have been 2 board meetings ago, we didn't really have a resolution about the total cost of that. And this is the middle school elevator, $211,000. Now, one of the things with that is we can't operate the current middle school unless that elevator is operational. I mean, it doesn't have to do with projections for the future or anything. It's a handicapped accessible issue. We cannot operate that middle school without that operation. We have no way to do it. We can't clean it, we can't service handicapped accessible students. It works on not even close to current systems. It's the equivalent of vacuum tubes. It really is that old in terms of its operation systems. So we're spending, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong with the numbers, but a couple $1,000s just for a service call.
Typically, yeah.
Because there's only one person that can even knows what to do with this age of system. And the staff don't want to ride in it.
But David, didn't you say like with this that we're doing, we're bringing it right up to speed more or less?
Well, we're making it 21st century, so we're going to make it computer-based. We're going to eliminate anything that's old and actually pull the whole lift out, pull everything out. We're going to use the hole that's there and put in a state-of-the-art system that's not going to fail. That it's based on like a current Maytag washer dryer, plug it in, you know what's going on with that.
Kind of timelines would it take?
That's gonna take between 5 to 7 weeks. So that is definitely gonna be a summer project. And if we move forward, that we would get on their docket right away because they're hard guys to tie down.
And I put it in energy exemption dollars is we have checked with everybody we need to check with. It does fit under that classification. There is money available there. But if not out of that fund, then out of the 10. I'm just more looking at a need.
Are you looking for a motion for
Yes.
just the elevator?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I would
What is
so.
left in that?
Okay, so we have a motion by Mike and a second by Amy. Discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these projects and I just don't know recently how much money are we working with? How much was remained in excess after the initial projects?
It's my understanding that approximately $300,000 is left in there. Specifics, we'd have to,
Well, I think that's what was the total, was it 1
Well, yeah, well, I'm looking at, you have in excess of $1 million worth of projects here, so.
Right.
Do we have in excess of $1 million in energy exemption dollars? to
oh,
pay for
actually,
those?
the middle school bathroom upgrades are not approved.
Yeah, those are.
So,
Right.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, to be clear,
Right.
I just want to know where the money's coming from.
there's enough money in there.
Yeah, the energy. Oh, yeah.
Can anyone provide me with how much money is in there?
We have it.
Wasn't it 13?
She's looking
Yeah,
at
1.3.
Oh, but one.
So the board didn't approve
That's what I thought.
337.
Yeah,
One
but-
point
That's what I thought it was.
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
But I'm not sure.
Right.
Well, Michelle's checking right now. We have-
I have to pull up some
Yeah, no problem.
documents.
Yep.
Oh,
It probably wouldn't have been enough, or would have been really close if the board had approved the middle school bathroom upgrades,
bathrooms, yeah.
which has not been approved. It's just listed up there.
Right. It's just under a million.
Or I guess the other way to ask the question is, if you subtract the things that have been approved, how much money's left to approve for $111,000?
Yeah, there's,
Now we have like 300.
yeah, the dollars I was working off was 1.1 million. The reason I'm checking with Michelle is because there's 2 funds in the
Yes.
same account.
Right.
So there's non-referendum debt, there's actually $2 amounts. And in another line item tonight on the board docket, we're talking about the science build, which is a total, we're not talking about those dollars at all. So I don't want to be confusing the two, so I am checking on that. So that's later in our agenda. But I know it's like 7 or 8 clicks she's getting to it right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out which email it would be. Which document we propose numbers in? Energy efficiency. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, we had,
From a classroom observation perspective, this is called good wait time. So the
Yeah.
principals know what I'm talking about when they observe teachers, so. Go ahead, Michelle, sorry.
we had 1.1 million unused contingency. And then we approved those projects.
Yeah, that was under the energy exemption report.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
When I heard what you were asking for, I remember where that was.
Right.
It's under that additional Nexus project. So.
They do all this at a 1.1 million.
We have 400,250, 400.
Okay, just for two totally different numbers.
After this would be approved.
I guess I'll ask it this way. How
She gave you
much,
the before
what is the unallocated balance in energy exemption?
400,250.
Before this approval.
For the approval of the two.
Potential.
That is
Right,
correct.
because the 3 that were approved are 700,000, round numbers.
Right.
Right.
Okay. After approval of 180.
Gotcha.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Catch that, Amy?
2 no's?
No, he's whispering.
Oh, I said, no.
No, 2 no. Motion will pass. Item 14, new business, discussion and possible decision on the acceptance of a pool donation.
Kelly and his family come forward with a $5,000 pool donation. I've already prepped a letter thanking them for the donation. And obviously, that's linked to some discussion early today for the board with respect to the sound system. They thank you for that donation. They also did have a conversation with me about matching donations in the future. I'll follow up with that as well.
I would so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike and a second by Matt. Further discussion?
They receive a charitable donation letter.
Yes. Yep, we're ready to go with that after the board's approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will carry. Item 14B, discussion and possible decision, approval of the spring 2020 Start College Now and early college credit applications.
These are an important part of what we do in the high school environment, to dual credit options and credit options for students also in our school or outside of our school, working with local universities or technical colleges. So it's a pretty standard approval process.
Seek a motion?
Also move.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mike and a second by Jess. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will carry. Item C, discussion, high school science addition remaining funds.
Yep, and if you jump into this document, you guys all have that in front of you. We have a couple options with this. And like I said, I didn't want to confuse this with an earlier discussion about the elevator. There's $1,168,758,758 in a segregated account of unused funds from the science edition. And when Michelle and I came on board, we were looking at these funds thinking that there would be large expenses that possibly were pending from previous administration. After some time and double checking and doing due diligence, this money is available in this segregated account, and we have some decisions to make. It makes sense. The options are right there for what we can do with this. Cash defeasance, we've talked about. Defeasing the debt, or not the debt, the bonds. And that explains exactly what that means, the benefits. Retire a portion of the debt early. They're both good options. Just want to put that out there. This is very pro-taxpayer from both perspectives. A lot of positive financial information out here, and regardless of the decision the board makes. Option 2, debt retirement. Now, funds will be transferred to Fund 38 for debt service retirement. Semi-annual payments would be paid with these funds from Fund 38 for debt service retirement. So the benefit, we free up $298,000 of limited revenue each year through 2023. So that's $298,000 a year for 4 years out of the 10 fund, right? So that's over $1.1 million that would be worked back into the general fund. The freed up limited revenue can be used for general operations. We don't need to make those decisions tonight. It could be used into Fund 46, future capital projects, partial all. Like I said, none of those decisions need to be made tonight. In looking at the options before the board, debt retirement, to me, makes a lot of sense. It gives you lots of options, and you're retiring debt to the local taxpayers. Additionally, with the tax levy that's coming up, I think in the next line item, we're going to be reducing the levy, or recommending to reduce the levy, and reducing the local tax burden by over $300,000. The specific numbers are in the information, so, yeah.
So, as I looked at, and maybe correct me if I'm not looking at this correctly, it's entirely possible. As I looked at the adjustments made to the budget, there's adjustments in revenues and expenses, which nets us an approximate $300,000 deficit or shortfall compared to where we were before. And the debt retirement sure appears to me to open up an opportunity to mitigate that $300,000. Like the two just balance each other out because you would have this money available.
If we take that 298 and we don't, make a line item in the budget and put that into Fund 46, you are correct. It would just, kind of, what would we have, like a $3,000 deficit?
I look at it like when I find a $10 bill in the dryer.
Right.
Like, oh, that's awesome.
Right.
I wanted to go get lunch anyway. So,
Right, yeah.
That's where I would fall. I think that retirement's the best option.
I think there's very good options in front of the board right now, especially whatever option is decided, to look to the public and say, we've done our due diligence. Thank you, Steve Kaiser and his team and the groups that we work with for coming in so under budget that we're sitting in a situation where we're like, okay, let's retire that, if that's what the board chooses to do.
Okay, so doesn't what we bring back in November?
You can make the decision.
Well, just as
It's
discussion.
not posted as a decision.
Right,
So that'll be coming back, correct?
right,
Okay.
that one will.
Got it.
That's right.
Okay. Any questions? Before I move on, so we discuss it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it possible that that could be decided on tonight because it does affect our levy? Or would the board adopt an all-fund levy because it's not gonna affect the total levy? The total levy's gonna be the same no matter whether you do this or not. But the amount that would be levied in Fund 10 and Fund 38 will vary based on your decision here. So if the board can adopt an all-fund levy and not be specific, then that would be fine.
It's not posted for
Yeah.
possible
Okay.
decision. I don't think we can make it.
Okay,
But you could about the levy.
okay,
Right, the levy,
You could about the levy.
right?
okay.
Well, yes, I think that, well, for sure, I think both of those statements are true. But we could have the discussion now,
Yes.
Right,
which would
give her the answer.
lock in
Yes.
the board. Well, not technically,
Right.
because we could still choose to change our mind next month when it comes back. But for all intents and purposes, we could go into next month's meeting with an understanding that, based on the discussion that could happen right now on this topic C, right?
Right.
That would then, and I don't want to use the phrase tie our hands, because it wouldn't. Again, we could change our mind, but we would essentially be making the decision today on C by setting the dollar amounts on D.
One of the things I wanted to do for the board and for the public is it's a large decision.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's a big money decision. And just to go slow with it and to make sure that everybody knew exactly what we were talking about, so that there's no,
The question.
And
Yeah.
one, if I could say that, if you chose to retire debt at this point in time, you could still do cash diffusions as you go on, later on, you know?
right.
You just wouldn't levy for that amount this year, and then maybe if the board decided, well, we want to, you know, do some cash diffusions, that in the future, then you wouldn't be continuing to use debt retirement.
Can you tell us the document we have tonight as it relates to, let me get the right wording, the final budget levy and tax rate documents? My presumption is that the figures in there are not contingent on any decision on item C.
Well, the way, if you look at option one for the levy, that would be if the board was not going to use any of the fund balance towards retiring debt. So we would still need to levy in Fund 38 for those payments for the science edition debt. That is the difference. The total levy is the same, but the amount we would levy in Fund 10 and Fund 38, which we need to tell the municipalities and the DPI which is which.
Okay, yeah, I see.
That's where that difference is.
How in discussion do you determine the flavor of the decision without? Is there
Well,
a
you
process for a straw vote or poll
You know, kind of get an idea where everybody's leaning, or kind of like what did we show the 25 to 30% last month, or
My recommendation would be to retire the debt, not differences. In this situation, I think the financial benefit to the district is, it far outweighs, my recommendation would be option 2. That you're retiring the debt and still, then on top of that, we're still reducing the tax burden on local taxpayers by over $300,000 on top of that, along with retiring the debt.
I would be leaning toward option 2 as well.
I'm fine with that also.
Peter?
Give Megan. I
I don't know what
He's
that
reading,
means.
that's good.
Yes.
Like I said, it's a big decision, it's important to ask the questions, have the
Yeah.
discussion, and
I would like to know a bit of Kevin's thought process as well.
Thank you, you took the words out of my mouth, I wasn't, yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, everybody knows that if we're gonna buy treasury secretaries, or securities, you might as well put the money in the mattress, because we can't arbitrage for one thing, but we're not at any risk of that in today's interest rate environment.
right.
So, it seems to me that this is really it's an economic no-brainer to do option 2. It's also a political, in this case, it's a political no-brainer as well. I don't like making my decisions based on political expediencies on almost any issue, but to me, certainly option 2 is the only one that makes sense tonight.
Yeah, I felt it prudent with such a large money decision to make sure that we had time.
I mean, listen, I mean, the biggest benefit actually is the freeing up of the $300,000 a year for 4 fiscal years. That's,
So do we give Michelle some direction?
well, I think we will when we get to D.
Okay, that'll okay.
Because it's really not direction, we're actually going to make the decision.
You're gonna make the
Right.
decision on the left.
Right,
All
right.
right, sounds good to me.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Moving on to item D, discussion and possible decision, final budget levy and tax rate for the 1920 school year.
When I turn things over to Michelle at this,
I don't know where it sends it to.
okay, I'm out.
Do you want me to?
Can you?
Yes. I don't have access to it.
I know, I'm in my other, I'm in G, that's why.
Unless you want to present, David.
I can throw my notes.
I'm out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have the printout, but,
You raise your hand, I can throw it.
okay.
Do you want me to throw mine up, Brady?
Yeah, I don't have access to it.
Yeah.
1 second. Yes.
Share. I mean, this is.
Don't put too much pressure on it.
There we go.
Fine.
Okay, we got it up there now.
Now that all of the final numbers have come in, enrollment, student counts, membership, the state aid, and property values, these are the adjustments that need to be made to the budget. Revenue adjustments, state aid for exempt property, that's a decrease of $26,326 from what was projected. NTC mini grants, this is a carryover from prior years, so I found out this was a carryover and needs to be budgeted. It wasn't budgeted. Although the money came in last year, it wasn't spent, we still need to budget it to spend it. Open enrollment revenue, open enrollment in, was higher than what I projected. The total amount of open enrollment in is $1,310,889. So we need to increase our revenue budget by $47,000. Equalization aid, the decrease from the July estimate is $113,115. The Fund 10 tax levy, increase due to membership increase is $60,839. An increase in the tax levy, whatever you don't get in aid, what was projected would be an increase in the tax levy. That's $113,115. Increase due to a decrease in Fund 38 levy, and that's if the board chooses that option 3, that adds $298,561 back to the general fund. And then an increase due to an increase in voucher aid is $2,400, that's a net figure. So that total increase in the tax levy is $474,915 from what was projected before. Total revenue adjustments, as there's a minus there, is $405,367. And then budget adjustments, open enrollment expense, open enrollment out is a total cost of $1,564,513, and of that 289,000 was not budgeted. Again, the NTC mini grants, budgeting the expense of what we, the revenue that came in last year. And then general education vehicles, the district at this time does not have our own vehicles to transport general education students, and we need to purchase some. So we're looking at least 3 vehicles at 62,000. And then, I think I must have leaned on the document, yeah,
Is the 298,000, is that what we just discussed in item C?
up there, yeah.
Yeah, that is the same
Yeah.
vote.
And as David said, this would not be decided tonight as far as, levy, putting that money into Fund 46. So if we did put that money in Fund 46, it would be an expense, right there. And then a difference too in state general aid deduction for private schools, that DPI just taxed that on to us. And that'll come out of our aid at the end of the school year. So the total expense adjustments would be $706,473, but the Fund 46 piece has not been approved, so basically the net on that would be 301,106, but without that change, then we're basically at a balanced budget. We're looking at $3,000 difference, decrease in fund balance. And then on the, I think the next item.
Yep. It's ready to cast my screen. Okay, I can do this. Just 1 second. Just need a quick second here. Maybe 2 seconds. Don't worry, we got it.
All right.
There it is. Okay. And X out of this. X out of that. Okay. So this is the tax levy, Michelle?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this brings up different options in the levy with respect to conversations that we have in the previous line item. Michelle, why don't you walk through that?
Okay, so, the 1920 tax levy, the all-fund tax levy for, the district is set to be $10,058,330. The equalized property values increased by 6.1%, that's not on here, but it did. These are the TID-out values of $1,159,838,236. That, together with the levy, it determines the levy rate of $8.67. Last year's levy rate was $9.42, to give you an idea of the change.
That's right here.
Option 1, using the science addition funds for cash defeasance. These would be the levy amounts, general fund, non-referendum debt service fund, Fund 38, that's where the energy efficiency and the science addition debt payments are paid out of. Then the referendum debt service fund, community service fund, Fund 80. Those two would not change with the board's decision on the science addition funds. Option 2, the general fund, we would levy that additional, we'd have that additional $298,561 to levy there in Fund 10, and we would pull that from the Fund 38 levy, that wouldn't be on here. And then we have the referendum debt service and community service, totaling $10,058,330. Again, property values, levy rate, and then at the bottom I'm showing you the 2018-19 tax levy, amount of $10,422,803, and that levy rate of $941.
Of last year.
Last year,
Last-
yeah.
the last
So we are proposing, option 1 is what you would levy if you were gonna defease, use cash defeasance with those science funds, and you would be levying the total amount of the debt service payments for Fund 38 of $1,245,840. Option 2 is using the science edition funds to retire debt, so you would not need to have that $298,561 debt payment levied for Fund 38 for the science edition debt, so you could levy that in Fund 10. Those are the options. They both result in a levy rate of $8.67.
Which is it $340,000 less to local taxpayers? Is that correct?
$364,000.
$364,000 less to local taxpayers this year than last year.
And last year, there was a use of science edition funds for the debt service payments for that science edition debt.
When did that get paid off?
Pardon?
When will that be paid off? How many years that was for?
It was merged into, there was two, the science edition and the energy efficiency debt were both put together in a bond issue. So I believe it was a 20-year bond issue in 2018, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in the wording of the motion, how are we gonna go about it?
Well, it's either option one or option two.
Okay.
We'll make a motion to approve option 2.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Matt and a second by Jessica. Discussion.
Yeah, I just have a couple of items, or one item actually. We have discussed, we did have a brief discussion, and David, it may have just been in my conference room. I don't remember if it was in the board. I know it wasn't in finance because I'm not in those meetings. So I don't know if it was in my conference room when we've had our one-on-one, first time we met really. Or maybe it was when we talked initially about the budget a couple months ago, whatever that was. But there was a conversation about putting some money annually into a fund for long-term construction and big maintenance, things like roofs and, boiler systems and all of that.
It was in your conference. We had,
Okay.
We had that in this one.
Okay, so it came up multiple places then.
that was Fund 46.
So, okay, and that's what I was trying to ascertain.
The Fund 46 discussions for this board are going to be important in the next few months, because the first time that Fund 46 can be utilized ever in the existence of this school district is going to be April of 2020. It never before has been used, but it will first be able to be used in April of 2020.
So the presumption then that I would bring from my knowing, understanding, and learning that is that it must have been a different fund in prior decades, really,
Fund 41 probably.
that was used for that purpose in this district.
Fund 41 more than likely.
And you levied into that.
Yep.
Yes, and so that's not part of this proposal, plan, or discussion, is that right?
No, the decision to move fund money to 46, 41 still exists as a fund, but nobody uses it anymore.
Yeah, but I'm talking about as a levied
No,
event.
Right. The board could make that decision between now and June of 2019 to take this year's budget.
2020.
2020, thank you.
Okay.
To take this year's, any money this year in our budget and put it into, make an expense to Fund
So
46.
I'll wait, go ahead.
So let's play this forward a little bit in terms of 46. How a lot of districts are using this. Everybody had 5 years before they could actually use it.
Yep.
So a lot of districts are through those 5 years already. So what a lot of districts are doing is they're putting a lot of their summer maintenance construction budget, and even some cases their entire building and grounds budget into 46, because this is the powerful benefit in state funding is Fund 46. If you move money from the 10 to 46, this is not part of anything being proposed today.
Yes.
It's being alluded to, but that's for future decisions by the board. I'll be clear by that. We'll make those decisions later as the board to do it or not. But the power of Fund 46 is if we move money, it doesn't mean we have to spend it, but at least we're telling the state, their state is looking at Fund 10 as if we spent it, which means they're gonna send us state money at the same level as if we're spending it on pencils and computers and whatever else.
So I get that.
Okay.
I really feel I am clear on that.
Okay.
But I'm additionally, I think, clear on the fact, it's on the screen, that the $10,058,330 is largely for operations of the school, separate from necessarily long-term construction and improvement of our buildings and grounds. Not saying that we don't know that we have these summer projects and the things that we know we need to do on an ongoing basis. I'm talking about, in our personal lives, we don't do this. We don't take part of our income and set a little bit of a way so that in 30 years we're going to put a new roof on our homes. At least most people I know don't do that, okay? When we get to that point, we then, as people and as running a household, we might do a home equity loan because most people haven't set aside regularly for 30 years $200 or whatever it happens to be. So I really am talking about having a deliberate, focused effort to set aside 2% of the levy, of a levy, whatever it might be, 2 or 3%, for those long-term needs that the district has, into some kind of a sinking fund, into some kind of a savings account. Fund 46, you're describing the value of it that is far beyond just anything else that might have happened. And so I don't think I'm really in favor of, if nobody else is in favor of where I'm going with this, I can live with setting the levy at 867, which is option 2. But I would say that if we do a 2%, it would be 2% more than what we already are budgeting for there, so it would be an additional $205,000, which would set the levy at 885, or 3% would be $311,082, which would set the levy at 894. I'm not trying to tell the taxpayers when I'm making this case that we want you to pay more taxes now for today's operations, but in my view, part of the importance of living in a community is that you don't just care about things today, you care about your community beyond, in many people's lifetimes, when you're not even here. And so to me, I think that we need to be so forward thinking that we maybe add 18 cents to 29 cents to the levy for these types of philosophical, valuable, how much do we really, how in favor of good stewardship in our community and support of public education are we? I would love our school district to be the one that when people get hired at Church Mutual in Stevens Point or at Greenhack or at any other local employer, not in Mosinee, and people choose to come to our school district. Not to Everest, not to Marathon, not to Point. I want them to live in our school district because they see us as a community and as a board that invests in something that is beyond just now. I'm off my horse now, so.
Fund 46 is the equivalent of a rainy day fund.
No, but
we ought to be funding it beyond what our plan is to run the school this year.
So,
that's all I was getting at.
Can I ask you to clarify something for me?
Sure.
I think I'm with you, and I think I agree with you. So there's Fund 41, which doesn't get you, I heard someone say, hey, we don't use that anymore. And my understanding of that is, that's a fund that you can tax because I know we need a $200,000 roof, we can levy $200,000 into Fund 41 to pay for that roof. I know when we were talking about Fund 46, that's something that we can levy into Fund 10, and then there's an expense to Fund 46 out of Fund 10.
That's
But
correct.
that requires us to
100%.
have money in Fund 10 to put into Fund 46. And
Well,
so we-
Today known as our fund balance.
That is
right,
correct.
which
That is
we
correct.
could allocate money, a set figure, out of fund balance into Fund 46 to feed it or to set it up for the rainy day future projects. But does the levying, this is where I'm a little confused, can we, because we would have to, if we went with 2%, we would have to levy into Fund 10 an additional 2%, and can we just as a board make a decision to do that? Is it?
No, you're not allowed to do that, the state limits you.
We're not allowed to,
Our
we're not allowed to levy 885?
No. No.
We're not.
No, the state has a, revenue limit worksheet, we have revenue limits, okay?
This is an important point. This is a great point. Go ahead.
So based on our student enrollment, based on, any type of, the increase that the state gave for the revenue limit, $175 per pupil increase, based on any type of exemptions, like a transfer service, we had, someone coming to our, or several students come into our district with IEPs that are costly. We can increase our revenue limit by those things, otherwise we're limited to that revenue limit. When we have declining enrollment, the revenue limit's going down, okay, so that stopped. So we have this revenue limit, and you get that dollar amount, and then you subtract off, state aid, the certified state aid, equalization aid. You subtract off state aid for exempt computers, and then state aid for exempt personal property. Those come off, and then what is left is your allowable limited revenue. And that amount you can levy in Fund 10, Fund 38, and Fund 41. That amount, you're limited to that amount. So when you see that 8,267,738 and the 947,279, those two together total our limited revenue. That is remaining, we cannot levy any more than that. We can split it apart.
Yeah, correct. You can split it apart. Let's take one big step back, go 30,000 feet. Revenue limits drive every public school in the state of Wisconsin. Revenue limits are the start and end of school financing for the last 20 years. And I'm not saying that's good or it's bad, it's just the truth.
Understood.
So what Michelle just laid out is the limitation on the local authority, that they're limiting what this board is able to do based on that revenue limit. Because you're inside of the dollars that are listed on this sheet.
So I'm discerning that the only way to get additional money into Fund 46 beyond the money that's already in Fund 10, because that's that whole fund balance conversation.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is for us to levy the 867. Local taxpayers pay their share, the state gives us their share. And then to limit the expenditures that the district spends on everything else. And then whatever would theoretically be left, we could additionally push into Fund 46.
Right, that is correct. And that's.
So that comes back to the question Matt was alluding to, and that is that we can't add to get money in there. We can only decide not to spend all the money on current operations, salaries, benefits, cleaning, ongoing maintenance. So we have to make a decision as the board, and you said till next June, how much of our $10,058,000 we might want to put into it. So it's not the add, it's the subtract, and I get it now.
The reason that this was a huge board meeting was that we're talking about the fund balance. Go back to several discussions, and we'll bring that up in the next board meeting, is that these are all very connected conversations If you're gonna set 25 to 30%, it's directly related to what we do here. If we're looking at, you can exceed the revenue limit with a referendum.
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay, so
I wasn't going there.
I know, I mean neither, I'm
I'm
just,
trying to figure out how to get that in 46.
right, yeah, you can't.
No, that wasn't my, that's not
Right,
even
right.
what I was alluding to.
Okay, I just wanna bring that up, but also wanna bring up that if you make the decision on option 2, the board can make a decision at a future board meeting to put all, or part of the money that we're not paying in debt service to Fund 46.
Sure.
That's
So-
290, that was on the
200
benefits.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a future decision for the board. You could make that decision, 250,000, 200,000 a year for every year, whatever. So you could make those decisions, which is why I scaffolded.
And that's about 2.7%, by the way.
But you're still, at that point, it's kind of semantics, because you're still getting Paul, because you're 300,000 over budget, where over revenue, your expenses are $300,000 now over what our revenues are projected, so even if you take that money and put it in Fund 46, it's gotta come out of fund balance anyway.
Yes, but you're gonna get aided on it, so that makes it more advantageous.
Right.
You're still not gonna make anything on the interest rate or have it saved, but at least now you get aided on
And
it.
at the end of the day, I asked that question because I didn't know, but to simplify that, I totally agree, it'd be great to add 2% to the levy and put that money in, but what you're saying is, there is not a way for us to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that would be a universally held position of the board, and that's fine, because we can't. So no one has to go on record and
Actually, this was wonderful because it's school finance 101, which is
Yeah.
something that,
Yeah,
you know, into getting
Thank you.
at,
Oh, you're welcome.
in terms of the levy and the dollars and fund balance and what we can and can't do.
We can have that conversation, January, is it?
we have till June,
June.
Yes, we can move money until June.
not funny money. Oh my gosh, you're being recorded.
We bought some good,
No,
we bought some good
46
printers, can we just make some?
Come on,
Okay,
You
so
said it.
did I really?
Yes, you did.
We do
You meant
have-
to say fund, and you said funny money.
so we
Fund 46.
do have a motion and a second. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So we didn't need a roll call on setting the levy.
No.
Okay.
So option 2.
Yes.
So option 2.
Option
Item 15, other reports, Wasby, Kelly.
Yes, this is me. We have a workshop coming up on this Thursday. I think there's 5 or 6 of us attending that. That's at the Holiday Inn up in Rocktrout. And then there also is a conference in Stevens Point,
And
Saturday,
the levy is gonna
November
be
2nd.
8.67, right?
And that
Levy.
is some really good sessions
Thank you.
in there also. So that concludes my
Okay. CISA? Mike?
Mike, wait,
All right.
Okay.
We were having a good discussion.
you were.
Sorry.
Cut you short.
Did we interrupt?
Well, anyway,
Sorry.
Lisa and I have their
Oh.
handout, and I read it, and you completed it as well.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Item 16, future agenda items. So, anybody want to bring something forward to?
We actually have several that were brought up in terms of fund balance, future agenda items. Let's see, so policy 6235 on fund balance, emotional support dogs, first reading in November. Those are a couple things. CED policy, I'll continue to work on that. No promise in terms of policy, but information.
Staff, and could you do it in staff and
I'll continue to push on that.
Okay.
All right, I'll continue to work on that. And we'll have a closed session in November about the expulsions and expulsions in general.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I'll post that.
Okay. So anybody else have anything they want to bring forward? I do notice too that we're getting emails that Amy's sending to everybody about attending some functions within the school, so if you guys can make it. I know the first one, I think, was on Thursday, isn't it, at the elementary or something?
I'll be there with the parents.
Well, there you go, so report next month on that.
There you go.
All right,
President, volleyball playoff,
all right, good.
soccer playoff,
Ooh.
If anybody wants to drive to football with me, I'm
football in the
going.
Richmond.
We won.
Okay, moving on to item 17, movement into closed executive session. The board will go into closed executive session pursuant to section.